Art Junkies presents Weld Wednesday with AWS. Brought to you by the American Welding Society. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, so joining me for this month's edition of Weld Wednesdays with AWS is Scott Ellsworth and Joe Young. Scott, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right, thanks. Yeah, I am Scott Ellsworth. I am a subject matter expert or an apprenticeship expert. I work for Fastport, which is a contractor to the USDOL and part of the USDOL Center for Excellence. And really what the center is trying to do is to connect the workforce world with what employers need, with education, and get all of those things to work together. So the work that we're doing with AWS is a part of that and has really helped us reach a whole new audience.
And then Joe, why don't you do a quick introduction as well? I'm sure most everybody who listens to the show knows who you are, but go ahead and let it rip.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Joe Young. I am the Senior Manager of Workforce Development for the American Welding Society Foundation. My role is pretty diverse. I get to support, companies, individuals, and, all things workforce development, and that kind of runs the gamut. I think for today's conversation, we're going to focus on the apprenticeship, registered apprenticeships, and kind of some of the great work that we've been able to do with Scott and the Fastport team and kind of bring that to the table, especially, those who are looking to probably, see what pathways, how do I get into the industry? And then if you're a business owner, how do you get good skilled labor? How do you retain it? And, what options are out there for me, to fight the battle? I think we all know the struggle is real with the labor market, especially in the skilled trades arena. So with that being said, Jason, I'll let you kind of kick us off. So hopefully that did a good job there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely skilled labor is a bit of a hot topic right now. And Scott, we got to meet last year at the Weld Summit there in the Woodlands, Texas. And I thought it was so cool because you talked about, how you're working to build more apprenticeship programs, which I think is fantastic because apprenticeships are huge. I am a huge proponent of apprenticeships because, like I said, I come from a background of welding education, and I can only teach so much to a group of students, regardless of the length of the program, whether it's 1 year, 6 months, however many hours the students are putting in. Everything is fairly general. You cover some structural stuff, you cover a little bit of fabrication, some fit up, some detail work, weld symbol interpretation, blueprints, measuring, all that stuff. So they've got a pretty broad idea of, some of the things they're going to be doing in industry. But once they step out of the doors, once they graduate and get into enter the workforce, they need some very specific skill sets. And that's something that, an apprenticeship program can kind of take over that general introduction into, welding, cutting, fitting, fabricating, and dial it into very specifics to, what our company does. Our company, we're in heavy construction, or we're in structural steel, or we're in automotive. That company needs specific skill sets. So tell us about some of the stuff you guys are doing, working with companies to develop apprenticeship programs, because for a long time, apprenticeship programs, they've only been accessible or available through local skilled trade unions. But now individual companies are picking up apprenticeship programs.
Yeah, and Jason, that's one of the places where so many people don't get what apprenticeships are. Apprenticeships, the way that they used to be, it was an electrician or maybe a plumber or a handful of other really heavy skilled trades that everybody thinks of as those are apprenticeable occupations. Now, almost anything is apprenticeable. And I talk to folks all the time about, really what an apprenticeship is. There's not some magical formula to this. It's really structuring how do you learn something. It's taking the key components, which are the theoretical learning, the things you need to know that are kind of book learning and all of those kinds of things that you may learn at school or you might learn online for some of these programs that are online, et cetera. And then you add that to a structured hands-on program. And what that means is that somebody like Joe or yourself, who's got a lot of knowledge in a subject, who knows how to do it, is there as a mentor to these individuals who maybe they went to school and they learned kind of the background of it, but they don't know actually how to put that into use. Or worse yet, the way that so many of us in business, and I was in manufacturing for 25 plus years. I saw this a lot. Many of us, the way we did training is we would spend a lot of time teaching somebody how to do something, but we almost never told them why they needed to do it, because that just wasn't part of it. And so what the apprenticeship does is it pulls all that together, and it takes the knowledge. And in the case of AWS has got some great programming for the theoretical knowledge. Welding employers have got fantastic mentors and people who know how to do these things. Pull them together, put structure around them. Voila, you've got great employees. That's all an apprenticeship really is. There's not some magic, unless you want to be a Jedi, and then the whole thing.
I mean, if you think about it, like apprenticeships date back to like the Gilded Age. I mean, you would actually, as an apprentice, you would go, live with a journeyman, and they would teach you everything over the course of, like 5 to 7 years. It was like an entire journey to go through this process to be able to perform the work on your own. Whether it was being a stonemason or a blacksmith or somebody working in metals or any skilled trade, you had to go through, over 10,000 hours of training, hands-on training, to develop these skills. And now, I mean, it seems like more and more nowadays, the resources just aren't available. Employers want a turnkey solution. They want to hire somebody with 5 to 7 years worth of work experience, put them out there on the line, put them out there in the field, and just have them go to work with, based off of, you knew enough to get through the interview process. We think you're going to be a good candidate. Go out there and do the work. And that's simply not the case. You got to bring somebody in. You have to show them. I know a lot of companies, they spend tens of thousands of dollars on initial training for their employees. But once that, your probationary period, whether it's 3 or 6 months, once that's over, you're just you're another cog in the wheel now. So providing additional skills to keep skilling up that individual, I think it gives somebody a reason to stick around, number one. It seems like the last place that companies want to spend money on is their workforce, because a lot of them are afraid of, if I train this person, if I give them more skills, they're going to leave. They're going to go find another job that pays them a little bit more money. So, I mean,
right.
I could kind of see where an employer would be apprehensive about setting up a program to skill up their workforce if they're just going to leave at the end of the day.
Well, there's a couple of things that I always say to that. I mean, one is, this is a build versus buy strategy. Every employer is out there looking to buy fully competent, fully qualified people. So it's a bidding war right now. We're all out there looking to see, who is the one individual who is perfect for this particular job, and then I'm paying top dollar. And that person tends to be going out and chasing the dollar. The flip side of that is, if you say you're going to build and you're going to invest in somebody, you bring someone on board who may not have any skill whatsoever in a particular role, and you say to them, look, I'm going to teach you how to be fully competent in this. Those folks are usually far more committed to you because you've invested in them and they invest in you. When you're an apprenticeship provider, a company that provides apprenticeships, usually that's not all you do. You get folks into the idea that this is continuous learning. You want them to always be better. You want them to learn that next skill set and the next skill set. And so an apprenticeship's not a terminal job. I train you, you become a welder, and then you're going to be a welder for the rest of your life, whether you want to be or not. Hey, if you want to go on to that next thing and be a CWI, fantastic. Did I say that right, Joe? CWI?
Yep, sure did.
Okay.
Certified welding inspector.
All right. I didn't want to get that one wrong, but I may have. And so it's that idea of continuous learning that makes people think, hey, there's somewhere for me to go beyond just, I'm going to be laying down bead day after day in the exact same way, in the exact same job. And then the other thing I tell employers is, once you recognize that you can build your own workforce, it's not so terrifying to have somebody leave. If they move on, it's good for the industry, it's good for the market, and you know how to build another one. And that's really huge and very empowering for employers. And it's one of the things that I say it takes the stress out of if somebody wants to get up and take off.
Yeah, I think apprenticeships they're a great program because it requires buy-in from both the employee and the employer. So now the employee or the apprentice, they feel like they're a part of the team. This company is investing, in me dollars and time and effort for me to learn this skill. They're going to have a little bit more. They're going to have a sense of belonging to that company, a little bit more of a commitment than if you just, okay, yeah, they're hiring me in at $20 an hour, and then, oh, well, this company over here, they're willing to pay 21.
Right.
Right. But if I bring you in and I train you and I skill you up, you're gonna have a reason to stick around because that training's not gonna stop. It's gonna be continuous. Like I know when I went through the apprenticeship program, even once I topped out, I could go back for additional training year round. They had Kennedy Space Center fall protection certifications that we had to get, off-road forklift operations, to be certified to work on some of the job sites. So like employers can continuously provide additional skill sets, to make the employee a little bit more valuable. And then along with, the employee becoming more valuable, you're getting wage increases the entire time. Whereas with most companies, you hire on at a good salary and it's pretty stagnant. I mean, you're really not getting even the cost of living, you're not getting that increased yearly addition to your salary to compensate for cost of living. I know a lot of people that have, great jobs are making really good money, but they've been making that same dollar amount for the past 3 to 5 years.
And that's great for employees. But you said something that as an employer is so exciting to me. And that is you said, well, I want to get this certification or that certification. So you're engaged in wanting to grow and to constantly learn that next skill set. I mean, every time I talk to Joe, the number of welders that are going to be needed in the system gets bigger and it's more terrifying. And I'm starting to get afraid to talk to Joe because last time it was 500,000 welders or something. And as employers, I mean, don't we want better people? We want folks who are going to say, well, you're going to fill one of those jobs that's in the 500,000 empty jobs, but you're going to be somebody who's hungry to learn, who wants to advance, who's always looking for that next thing. You're far more valuable to me as an employer than somebody who's just coming in for a job.
Mm-hmm. And I would, almost think that it also makes the employer a little bit more competitive when it comes to the bidding process, because they're now going to be able to bid on, like higher jobs, jobs that have a little bit more requirements. Your entire workforce has to have, they got to be certified in welding, or they have to have OSHA 10 certification, or they have to be certified in rigging and signalman. Now you can provide that workforce, whereas before you couldn't. You're trying to find somebody with these requirements. Well, now as a business owner, I can make sure this is all being taught in-house. You get certified through, whatever organization, gives out that certificate. You're meeting these standards. Now that company's a little bit more competitive in the bidding war, and they can supply that with skilled labor. They're not trying to buy that. They're building it from within.
Right. And most important of all, what AWS has built with their occupations and the structure of the program is exactly that structure. Here is the list of things that somebody has to learn to be considered a fully competent welder. So you're not dependent upon Scott's memory or Joe's memory or Jason's memory. You have a list that says you need to learn these things and you need to be able to do this other list of things. And that's what makes you fully competent. Without it, you're dependent upon the skill of the person who's doing the training, the skill of the mentor, the memory of somebody who's a supervisor, and the fact that your day-to-day world in a weld shop is pretty crazy. And if you miss something, then that individual just doesn't get it. Well, with an apprenticeship, there's a check for that. Did you get this skill set? And are you competent in that skill set? And that's really the magic of apprenticeship. And I think that people think, oh, this is just another program. It's not another program. It is a proven way of making somebody fully competent, which is why the Department of Labor has sunk over $1 billion into helping employers to build apprenticeships and to grow the apprenticeship system here in the United States. Other parts of the world, they've got this and they buy in and they get it. We've had it for 75 some years here in the US, but we haven't really, as industries, really dove into it except for a handful of jobs. And now people like AWS Foundation, they're saying, hey, our employer members, this would be valuable for them. We want to teach them and we want to take a leadership role in that. And we want to help those folks to become better trainers of new welders because we know it's good for the whole system.
Right. Now, what are some of the hangups? When an employer's thinking about, setting up an apprenticeship program, what's like some of the items you see being pushed back on? Like why, what would prevent an employer from saying, hey, you know what, I want to set up an apprenticeship program?
Oh, one of my favorites is I don't want the government all up in my business. And I get that, but that's not what this is about. This is really you developing a program that fully trains people. What the government's doing here is providing you support and saying, look, you've got to hit certain benchmarks to be able to say that this is a registered program. Doesn't cost you anything. The U.S. Department of Labor is not coming in to beat up on you. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, we've got some tools here to help you be more effective. Another is the one you mentioned, which is, of course, I'm going to train them and they're going to leave. I think we've talked that one to death and really have told people that's not a very accurate fear. Retention for apprentices is somewhere in the 90+% mark, which is astonishing compared to other individuals who just hire into a job, learn a skill, etc. Frequently, I think employers think this is a huge cost and it's something extra and it's a lot of work. Like anything else, it can be challenging if you don't do it every single day and know how to do it. But that's why there are people like Fastport, Center for Excellence, AWS Foundation, and a myriad of other contractors out there who are there to help you navigate that system. What it means is the part of it you're focused on as an employer is the things that you know and the things that you're going to do anyhow. Joe comes on board. He's a new guy. He doesn't know how to weld. I'm going to work with him and I'm going to teach him how to weld. I'm not going to just throw him out there and say, good luck to you. So that part of it is a cost you're going to already incur. And so that complaint that this is a high cost endeavor is really wrong. The thing that usually costs employers extra money is when they add on that theoretical learning side of things, because you're paying for curriculum of some sort. You're paying for a trainer, you're paying for a community college, you're paying for a career tech ed center. And typically we as employers don't do that. I would say that additional cost is fully worth it because you're giving the theoretical knowledge to these individuals that makes them understand the why of the things they do. And there's nothing better to have an employee who's more engaged and more knowledgeable than for them to understand why they do the things that they do.
That was always my problem when I was growing up. I want to know why. I want to know how things work. Why do we have to do it like this? And I think at the end of the day, it provides you a deeper level of understanding of what you're working on, and it gives it substance. This matters because now you understand the why. Like, why do I need to prep my base metal? Oh, because, I get better weld penetration when I do that. And these are things that, you're going to experience the why in an apprenticeship program. Whereas if you just come onto a company and you start working, you just know I have to do it this way because that's the way I was shown. You don't understand the value in what you're doing.
Right. Absolutely true.
Now, what about companies that say, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, I don't have the space to do an apprenticeship program?
The magic of the AWS foundations of the world. They have put together a national guideline standard, which really does all of the work for you. The hardest thing about an apprenticeship, and I've been doing this kind of work for about 8 years, The thing that I've learned that seems to be the hardest is to get an employer to sit down and really think about what are the skills that somebody needs, what's the theoretical knowledge that they need that matches up to it, and how do you pull all that together? People usually will say, well, I'll give you my job description. And the job description says things like show up on time and all of the typical job description things that we all like to put into them. What it doesn't do is it doesn't define competencies and it doesn't define knowledge. So the work that we've done with AWS is to sit down and say, okay, what does a typical welder look like? Now, this is not the same for every company, but there's typical. And then as a company, you've got something to work from to say, okay, let me tweak this, or let me add this skill, or let me take that one out because we don't do this. And as you do that, it's now customized for you, and you're off to the races because you've done all of the work. The other place where employers sometimes get stuck is they say, well, I'm only going to have one apprentice, and that's a lot of work for one apprentice. And what we usually do with those employers is we'll work with somebody that's what we would call a group sponsor. And there are a lot of group sponsors out there. There are some workforce development boards that are group sponsors. There are some community colleges that are group sponsors. There are some trade associations that are group sponsors. And so when we can find somebody like that, what a group sponsor does is they take on that kind of the administrative and management side of the program and being the registrar. And all the company does is provides the job and the hands-on training and pays the bill for the related instruction. And that's super valuable if you're only looking at, I want one or two apprentices. And so it makes it doable for almost any size company in almost any skilled occupation.
So it's scalable.
It is scalable.
Whether you got one employee,
and it's scalable going down as well.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned the Department of Labor kind of being a part of this whole operation. Where's the Department of Labor fit into this?
So the Department of Labor has built the regulations around what a quality registerable apprenticeship program looks like. And then they have also helped to fund some things. And about a little over half of the states have a state agency, which means that that state has invested in a number of employees to help employers build programs in the state. And the state may have some special requirements for that particular state. So it's more local control. The balance of the states are still federally controlled by the Office of Apprenticeship. And all that means is that they are the people who are just checking that you're doing what you said you're going to do, that you've built a program that meets the tenets of apprenticeship, which are 5 things. It's a job. It has theoretical learning. It's got practical hands-on training. There is pay for skill gain. One of the beauties about apprenticeship is that I know if I become more skilled, I'm going to make more money. And then the final is that it ends up with a nationally recognized credential. In the case of an apprenticeship that's registered, they get a journey workers credential, which is no longer a card. Now it's a certificate. And it's a great way for you to prove and show I've been through a rigorous program and that I've proven that I have the skills and the competencies for this particular role.
It's kind of like the skilled trade version of an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree.
Sometimes I would say it's better.
Oh yeah, well, 100%. Like
because you know how to do something, not just.
I don't know the theory behind it. I could actually go out there and tell you how this works and show you how to put it back together, take it apart, or repair it, or manufacture it, or whatever. I think that's the biggest benefit to an apprenticeship program because, like you said, you're getting hands-on training. So, and that's the biggest part. Like any type of skilled work, you got to get your hands on it. You got to get dirty. You got to get in there. You got to play with it. You got to work with this stuff. But You're getting the experience on the job, not out of a textbook, not out of an online curriculum or a content course. You're actually learning the theory about it, in one portion of your day, your training cycle, but then you're also going out there and you're doing the practical application of it, but you're also getting paid. So whereas like in college, you're probably people that have gone through college, they're familiar with an internship. You learn the theory at school, and then you go work for an internship for, a couple of months with some company or, a term, and you're bringing people coffee and, you're like getting stuff off the fax machine, and you're really not doing the actual work. You're just there. It's not a paid position, but with an apprenticeship, you're getting on the job training, but you're getting paid to learn. You're getting paid while you're on the job site. And then, depending on, how the apprenticeship is structured, you may be getting paid during your study time, or part of your working hours may require you to go in there and, study and go through some of the curriculum.
Yeah. And I would say, I went to engineering school and I had a co-op, and the absolutely most valuable part of my education was the time that I spent at the company applying the things that I had learned in class. And when I went back to class, I felt like I was a lot more knowledgeable and asking professors questions, et cetera. And having that marriage of hands-on with the theoretical learning it's impossible to beat.
So now how does a company set up an apprenticeship program? If they're interested in saying, hey, you know what, this is probably a good idea, let's go ahead and start investing in our employees, because like you said, we're going to skill them up. It's going to allow us to be a little bit more competitive for bidding. We're going to have a better diversified workforce, and we're going to retain a lot more of our employees this way because they have a little bit more of a buy-in. Let's go ahead and set one up. Like, what's step one?
Well, let me start with this. If you were outside of the welding world, I would say you look for a contractor like Fastport or any of the other contractors, and you get their help. In the world of welding, you reach out to Joe. And so I'm gonna let him talk a little more about how AWS has built this program and how they're helping to roll it out within the welding industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great point, Scott. And I think everything you touched on really, kind of creates a great sounding, description of what the apprenticeship model is, right? And there's a few little nuances with it, but bottom line is it's a great way to bring an individual into the workforce. It's another line in the water for an organization, that's hurting for employees. And at the end of the day, we haven't got the new workforce data numbers yet, but they're going to be coming out shortly. But we're looking around 8,400 open positions in the welding industry, annually. And it's a headache out there. And the skilled folks, you're going to take an individual, you're going to nurture them, bring them up to the skill set, and they're going to be perfect for your organization. So to kind of kick things off, if you're, in the welding industry and you want to learn more about this, kind of the efforts that, we've developed and, how we went about this whole process, we've created a landing page, and it's called weldingapprenticeship.com. And really it just kind of sums up the apprenticeship model in a nutshell, and kind of just says, hey, look, if you're an employer and you're in these industries, this could be an awesome opportunity for you to explore, to grow your workforce, help you grow your company, and, combat this labor shortage and skilled labor shortage that we're facing. And, obviously there's details in the numbers of that. And at the end of that page, there's a little connect button. You can fill out a quick little contact information. It'll schedule a meeting with me. I will talk to you face to face and share with you the national guideline standard that we've created for the AWS certified welder occupation that Scott kind of mentioned. And we kind of walk through it. I learn a little bit about your organization. What are your goals? What are you trying to do? How many apprentices are you looking to have, within the year or two, or what does everything look like? What is the picture? And then from there, we start those initial conversations, and we go down the road. We connect with Scott and kind of, start building out what things look like on the back end. Is there funding opportunities? What's it going to take to lift this program off? And what we've created is really a roadmap. We sat down with some of the champions and subject matter experts of the AWS that know the industry through and through. And they said, these are the competencies that we'd like to see in this occupation. And these are the things that are paramount for this individual to do their job effectively and efficiently. And that's, doesn't always come from me. That's coming from the smart folks, the board members, the committee members of the AWS that have shared that knowledge. So it's a very collaborative document that's been created that really has a resonating impact in the industry. And the best part about it is it can be tailored to your business. So like, let's say Joe's welding. Maybe I just service the oil field industry, and I only need folks to work in the oil and gas sector, and all of these things about sheet metal, stainless steel, aluminum's kind of outside the window. That's fine. We can tailor that to fit your needs. Talking with me is great because, I cut my teeth in the industry. I can kind of pick up what you're laying down. I may not know it all. I don't claim to, but if I don't, I'm happy to ask questions and bring the right people in who do know. And that's really what we're here to be, is a conduit, and we're here to help you so that if this is something you really want to deploy in your organization, you have all the resources and tools available to make that happen. So that's kind of just the guts of it. And I think a lot of people might ask, well, do you got to be a member of AWS? No, not at all. Would we like you to be a member? Absolutely. During the same time, you'll probably learn about, what good things we're trying to do for the industry, what great programs are out there, how you can get more involved. And that's okay. But bottom line is, we understand, hey, your work situation, the labor market situation, we're all in this together. We got to get more folks in. And if I get one, great. If I get a million, even better. So that's kind of the process. weldingapprenticeship.com. You can connect with me. We can chew the fat even more and take the ball and hit the ground running from that point forward with Scott and many other contractors that are available if it makes sense to do that as well. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. But yeah, I think, this is just, like I said, it's another great line in the water. Is it for every organization out there? No, maybe not. But is it an awesome opportunity? I would definitely, if I was a business owner looking to hire, I would definitely probably take a look into this a little bit deeper and see what kind of details are into it, because I think there is a lot of merit to this. We've known it's been around for centuries and it's proven to work. So there has to be some proof in the pudding, right?
Yeah. Now you mentioned the certified welder program. Could you touch on that a little bit deeper? Because that's one of the calls that I get all the time as an educator. Hey, I need you to send me 3 certified welders. Okay. Certified to what? So if you can kind of break down exactly what the certified welder program looks like for, that way when employers, they know exactly what they're asking for. Because I think 90% of the time they have no clue. It's just in their bidding documents that somebody that's certified has to perform the work.
Yeah, there's a big misconception, right? The qualified versus certified. And when you talk about a qualified welder, that's just an individual who's gone through a testing process. It's been, held to some standard, and they've, passed or failed it in some capacity. An actual certified welder is an individual that's gone through the AWS standardized testing process, where that weld test has been completed, has been subjected to the correct processes, and that testing environment's all been controlled and it's standardized, and they end up with a credential or a certified welder's card saying that this individual can, weld to XYZ. And that's really the certification piece. And that's what we've kind of built into this program, that we would like these individuals to be and have that card. So that's actually put into the process of that apprenticeship program. Now, we understand that that's not attainable for everybody, but that competency really dictates that top tier, that skilled individual that really can prove that they are a quality welder. Now, there's some kind of obviously logistics to pull that off, what that looks like and how to deploy that. But bottom line is that's ingrained throughout that apprenticeship program. And certain, as you complete those hours and as you move through, advance through it, that apprentice will become, let's say you could be certified in a very simple, like a flat process or position, I should say, flat position, maybe flux core process. And, your company may need this individual to be 3G, 4G, maybe even 6G restricted certified by the end of it, right? So it's kind of, you can build those components into it. Now that they have the journey worker certificate, they have an AWS certified welder certificate, and maybe you coupled some education in there with it, they might walk out with an associate's degree at the end of it. That individual right there is extremely skilled. And to have that person on the books working for you, I mean, I'd take 20 of them right now, right? I think everybody would. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not only trying to bring people in, but we're trying to build them the best that we can so that they're impactful and, they're sharp and they're going to carry the industry forward. And what better way to do that than through the apprenticeship model, right?
Yeah.
And isn't that where your next supervisor is probably coming from, right? The thing that's really great about an apprenticeship, and I think Joe and I have both kind of failed to mention this, is that it applies not only to that rookie who's coming in who knows nothing about welding, but it can apply to somebody who's already kind of been in the industry for a while. But it gives you a chance, it gives you a tool to really evaluate where they are in becoming a fully competent welder. And you can give them advanced standing for things that they already know and experience that they've already got, and they can still get to that journey worker's credential. And so it gives you a tool for, leveling off your workforce so that everybody is fully competent, not just a handful of individuals who maybe have been with the company for an extremely long time. And it gives you also a way, a very structured way of saying, what am I measuring you to? What are the 27 skills or 50 skills or 3 skills that you need? And what are the basic knowledge components that you should have? I can measure people that have none of that and how they're progressing toward the end game. And I can measure people who have been in the business for a period of time and help them to get to the end as well.
It also gives you a better, idea of where your workforce is, on a skilled level. So where to place which worker and stuff like that, because what competencies they have. Okay, this group of people over here, right, they're certified to do this, that, and the other thing. I can move them over here. Thus, again, making your company, a little bit more competitive during the bidding process. Because your company has all these certifications. They know that once you come in to perform that work, that entire workforce is documented that they're capable of performing the work. I've seen a lot. I mean, like in my short career in the welding industry, I've seen a lot of companies getting pulled off job sites because, the numbers look good, but when their workforce got there, like they just couldn't get it together, so they got to bring somebody else in there. But if I'm an employer, submitting a packet saying not only are we capable of doing the work, like here's all the documentation to prove it. And here's the guys that are coming on site to perform this work.
That's a great point. The marketing value of having credentialed people with journey worker certificates. And I can now prove, instead of just saying, I've got 10 really brilliant guys or 10 really brilliant gals, I've got some proof that shows that they're really brilliant. It's just like having a college diploma.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things you all touched on during the presentation you did with AWS, back in August, was the fact that you can get youths involved in this, which is something that, when I went through welding school back when I was in high school, I thought it'd be awesome to have a summer job related to welding. But the first job that I got, it only lasted 8 hours because I got fired at the end of the day. They told me, they said, we'd love to have you here, but you're not 18 and our insurance isn't going to cover you. So we're going to pay you for the day, but as soon as you turn 18, come back. But if that company had an apprenticeship program, they can kind of skirt some of the requirements of, we can't have anybody here under the age of 18 or anybody under the age of 21 because our insurance. But with an apprenticeship, that allows you like a new pathway to bring in younger skilled workers.
So let me start with the disclaimer. I am not an attorney.
But I did stay at Holiday Inn Express last night.
Right. What I can tell you, though, is that the Department of Labor has released kind of some labor guidelines, and it's about youth labor. And if you go to those guidelines, and Joe can help you find them, I can help you find them. The long and the short of it is that there are a number of, quote, hazardous occupations that if you're in a registered apprenticeship program, are no longer prohibited if you're 16 or 17 years old. The reason for that is simple. With a registered apprenticeship program, you have a mentor assigned to you. That mentor's number one thing is to make sure you operate safely. If you've got somebody with experience there working with you, then as a 16 or 17-year-old, you're every bit as capable to do welding and some of the other things that people consider hazardous, because somebody's walking you through the process. They're making sure you don't do things that are wrong or unsafe. And therefore, what it allows you to do as an employer, and a number of employers that I've worked with find this to be maybe even more valuable than some of the other things about apprenticeship, is that they can go down to juniors in high school and they can say, hey, learn these kinds of things at your career tech courses, then come to me in the summertime. You can work for me. You can do real work. I'll have you work with a mentor. You're going to learn some skills. All of that counts toward your completion of the apprenticeship. Then during your senior year, maybe you only go to school half days, come to work in the other half of the day. And when you graduate as an employer, I've already got a hold of you and I already have shown you what a fantastic place I am to work. And you're much more likely to come work for me. And so that's a great point, Jason, that so many employers really, really appreciate, is that this gives them that tool. Now, sometimes employers are going to say, well, my workers' comp still doesn't allow that. That's a conversation for them and their attorney and their workers' comp and their insurance folks. But I haven't really found that that's a problem in most cases.
I think you touched on a great aspect of the whole, why you would want to start an apprenticeship program, and that's safety. Again, when you put an ad out on LinkedIn or the monster.com or any of that stuff, you really don't know what you're getting when you hire somebody on. So they could be coming in with a lot of bad habits. One of the best reasons to set up an apprenticeship program is to say, hey, here's how we're going to work safely. And not only is that going to give the employer better insurance rates, but it's also going to prevent a lot of injuries on the job site. Because again, now we're talking the why. Why do I need to put a guard on the grinder? Why do I need to wear a face shield when I'm operating this piece of equipment? Why do I need to wear, sleeves and all this stuff when I'm performing welding tasks? You're explaining why, and you're showing them here's how we're going to protect you. Here's the potential hazards and the risks. Here's how we're going to mitigate these, so you don't have to worry about it. That way you come in with 10 fingers and 10 toes, and you're going to go home with 10 fingers and 10 toes at the end of the day. I think the safety is like the biggest, benefit to a company, because now we don't have to worry about our workforce coming in with bad habits. We're breaking them or we're creating new habits. We're setting the standards. It's not like just learn as you go. You kind of have, here's all the expectations laid out for you. And as you're rolling through this program, you're checking boxes. So now you're competent in each one of these little areas.
Right. And you've had somebody who has been around and who understands the operation, who has mentored you and made sure that you're doing it safely. That's a great point. And thanks for making that.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to kind of, mention too, is what we did integrate into that national guideline standard was ANSI Z49.1, safety in welding and cutting and allied processes. So that, touching on that and just understanding, the hazards being around welding and what's involved with it, that's going to be a critical component. Now, as far as OSHA, MSHA, there's all kinds of other safety bodies that are out there that may apply to your organization. There's some flexibility there, right? And we know that employer would probably lean heavily on saying, hey, we need to have this in here. I'm going to pull this out. We're going to put that in. So that's kind of, dealer's choice, if you will, but we've made ensured that the welding piece is in there and it has to be touched on. So
yeah. If anybody's
kind of
involved with like any work related to welding and cutting and fabrication and all that, Z49.1 is definitely the way to go. You want to make sure your employers are very familiar with that document. I think it's only like 79 pages. So, you can get through that, day one of your apprenticeship program. But also OSHA is another big one, because some job sites, they won't even let you on site if you don't have your OSHA 10 card. So incorporating, whether it's through online learning or in person, OSHA 1910 or 1926, whether it's general manufacturing or construction, you have that skill set. Now, again, you have a tangible wallet card that says, yes, I am certified to do this. I'm capable. I'm competent. Boom, here's another one. And then again, like the more of these certifications and stuff that you have that you're racking up, the more valuable you are to the employer. So like the apprenticeship program I went through, every 1,000 hours that we put in on the job, as long as we were keeping up with the curriculum and the content and all that stuff, we were getting a raise. So, I mean, an employer can tie that salary to, what are, how are you doing in your apprenticeship program? Okay, you're passing everything, you're putting in the hours, boom, you get a raise. So now you're incentivized to stay and continue and to push forward and complete that apprenticeship program. Not only are you getting that, journeyman certificate at the end, but you're also tied to a dollar value. So you kind of anticipate, like, okay, next year, here's how much money I'm going to be making. Versus if I go work for another company, what we agreed on day one, that may be all that I'm getting. I might not get a raise for 3 to 4 years.
So Jason, I'm going to flip your podcast on its head, and I'm going to become the interviewer here for a minute. I know why I believe in apprenticeship, and that's because I want to see employers fill all of those jobs in manufacturing and be able to keep manufacturing here in the U.S. But in the beginning, you said apprenticeship is really important to you and really a big deal, and you've referenced that you went through an apprenticeship. Tell us a little about your experience with it and what it meant to you.
I mean, it meant a tremendous amount because I went through formal training prior to getting into an apprenticeship program, but it didn't teach me everything I needed to know. So I've worked both sides of that coin. I've worked for, non-union contractors that did not have an apprenticeship program, and I've worked for a union contractor that did have an apprenticeship program. And I think the biggest difference was having access to that information. This information is going to help me work safer. It's going to help me work more efficient. I'm not going to have to learn through trial and error because all this stuff is documented. Like I'm learning rigging at, 2 nights a week at the hall. And then, Monday through Friday, I'm out there on the job site making picks, picking out the appropriate shackles, picking out the appropriate slings, hooking it up to the block correctly, calculating load weights, things that, when I was working non-union or non-apprenticeship program, we'll just use that because you can have an apprenticeship program whether you're union or non-union. So the company that I worked with, that's the biggest misconception. The company that I worked at, where I was doing rigging, that I didn't go through an apprenticeship program, it's just like, okay, I'm going to grab this strap because this is what we used last time. And I'm going to hook it up like this because this is how we did it last time. Whereas anybody that's been in construction, that every pick and every job site, it's completely different. If I would have been, I completely lucked out. Let's say I picked the wrong strap and we made a pick and, that lifting, the lifting sling failed because it wasn't rated for what I was trying to pick up. That's on me. And that's just pure ignorance because I was never formally trained to pick out the appropriate sling based on the weight of what I'm picking up. It's just, that's what we had in the trailer. That's, it was long enough. That's what I'm going to use. So for a long time, I lucked out. It wasn't until I got into an apprenticeship program that I actually learned how to rig things up correctly or, the safe way of doing things to, protect myself as well as the colleagues that I was working with. And that was the great thing about the apprenticeship program is everybody that's on the job site with me, they've had the same training. So they can look over and say, hey, that's not how you do that. I didn't have that when I was working for a company that didn't provide an apprenticeship program because they got trained by somebody else's bad habits as well. So to become a more efficient workforce, you've got to train your employees. And I think, like I said before, that's the biggest problem with a lot of companies. The last place that they want to put their investment is in the employees because at the end of the day, if I train them up, they could leave. And I've always been a huge proponent of train your people well enough to leave, but treat them well enough to stay. And whether that's through different benefits programs or pay or, you got to figure out what your employees value the most. Maybe it's time off with their family. Maybe it's not working overtime all the time. Maybe it is giving them overtime when they need it. So, you got to figure out what the benefit is to that employee to be able to retain them. So most of the time, if you have a high turnover rate, there's a problem with management. People don't quit companies, they quit people. So
Right.
That's something you want to look into. And if you have a company that's willing to make that time, effort, and investment in the employees and train and skill them up, chances are that employee is not going to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great mantra. And one of the things that you can do to treat them so that they want to stay is by giving them training and making them more valuable. I worked for a company that always used to say, hey, go ahead and go out and interview and shop yourself, and you'll see how much we've done for you to make you a better potential employee. And when you see that and you recognize that as an employee, you see the real value in apprenticeship.
It also
And that
provides
is that,
opportunity for growth.
right,
Like
it's
maybe
giving you the opportunity, and it's given the business somebody who's fully competent, fully qualified, and a much better employee in the end.
exactly. Maybe I don't want to weld under the hood for 20 years. Okay, we'll get through the apprenticeship program, then you can, skirt over this other opportunity that we have, and you can take some supervisory classes. You can get into some management classes because we have an apprenticeship program that branches into supervisor and management. Okay, cool. Now I have a direct path. I can physically see what I need to do to hit that end goal.
Exactly right. It's nice to know what it takes, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I don't like surprises too many times. Like I need a direct path because that way I can kind of plan things out. I'm a huge proponent of putting checks in boxes. So if I know what to write next to that box, I know what my next goal is. And then once I get all the checks in those boxes, I know, what I can attain at the end.
So the real beauty of all of this, and the reason that Joe and I are here talking to you today, is that we want employers to understand that there are tools to make this easy for you. As appealing as it may sound, you may look at it and go, "Oh man, I've got profitability to worry about. I've got safety to worry about. I've got on-time deliveries. I've got all of these other issues that I've got to focus on. What do I do here?" This is a phone call. Pick up the phone, and there are people that will help you to do this work so that you're not having to figure it all out on your own. And that's really where the beauty of all of this lies.
Yeah. Now, before we get out of here, why don't you guys go ahead and share all the different resources with the listeners where they can go to find more information on, setting up an apprenticeship program, some of the benefits, some of the common misconceptions of an apprentice, kind of everything that we've discussed today. Where can they find more information? And then I'll be sure to include that in the show notes.
Wow. I mean, the list of places is almost impossible to put into one spot. But I would say apprenticeship.gov is a great place for individual companies to go and just see from a non-industry the different ways that there are to set up apprenticeships. It'll talk about state agencies versus the Office of Apprenticeship. And you could probably live in there and navigate that site for days at a time, reading as much as you want. And then for this particular apprenticeship, then you're going to want to go to the AWS site, which, Joe, you're going to have to say what that is.
Yeah, it's weldingapprenticeship.com. And yeah, head on over that way. Runs the gamut. You want to get a hold of me, there's a direct contact link there you can fill out, and we can meet face to face. Happy to do it. Love chatting about it. And I think one thing I would like to put a plug in too, while we're kind of on the subject of growth, is we just didn't end at the certified welder component. We're going to see what this looks like potentially for the inspection route. What would an apprenticeship model look like for a certified welding inspector? And that's something that, we're going to see what welding occupations are out there and, what room we have to grow from our, position here at the society. So it's not over. We're just digging our teeth in, and more to come on that front. And certainly weldingapprenticeship.com will have those updates, I'd imagine, probably there for you, and maybe, who knows, a regroup on the podcast at some point, depending on where we get. But yeah, it's been great so far.
Yeah, let me know when you get that, you start working on an apprenticeship program for the CWI, because I think that's something it's definitely needed in this industry. I mean, you go in there, you take the test, you study, you know how to navigate the book, you know how to do a little bit with the tools, but like once I get on the job site, what do I have to do? Like, what's my job look like? So I think incorporating an apprenticeship program with a lot of the CWI firms and inspection companies, I think that, that's a huge benefit to them as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we have some very bright minds and folks that are going to have some pretty awesome input. So it should be a really cool project when it's all said and done. But bottom line is it'll be an incredible time putting this thing together. I don't know how chaotic it'll be, but it'll be awesome.
I can't wait to see it.
Fantastic. With the hope that we go to supervisor and HR and all of those different occupations at some other point in the welding industry, because that's all out there. It's a great way to build your workforce regardless of occupation.
Yeah, you're building it from the ground up versus trying to hire everybody in.
That's right.
Because again, you don't
know if
know
we'll
what you're
have.
getting.
I don't know if we're going to have podcast leader though.
Oh no, yeah, I don't. Yeah, we don't need that. I'm setting up my own apprenticeship program as I go. Well, guys, it's been great. Thank you so much for coming out to the show and explaining to everybody, what an apprenticeship program is, all the resources that are out there. Yeah, I mean, definitely we have to focus on our skilled trades, because every time we call up Joe, he's just got bad news. No, the gap's getting bigger and bigger. This is one way to help facilitate and kind of close that gap.
Absolutely. And thanks for inviting us. We just love talking about apprenticeship.
Oh, anytime. I've been wanting to have you on here for a while, Scott. Ever since you said, oh, yeah, I'm like leading this charge on apprenticeships, I was like, we've got to get this on the show. So, no, thank you so much for taking time and coming out and explaining it to everybody.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
It's been fun. As always, till next time, Jason.
Yes, sir.
Scott, it was good. I had a lot of fun.
You too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to this month's edition of Weld Wednesdays with AWS. For more information on how you can become a member or a volunteer with AWS, you can visit aws.org/memberships. All links discussed in the show are available in the show notes section of this episode. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.